Hello, everyone. My name is Russell Zahtab, and this is #Humanity. What we do here is we talk about everything from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, and we deal with anything humanity. Let me introduce to you Barry Lewis Green, and he is our host for today. And he runs this program together, and we have Hillary with us, but he's going to introduce her. So, friends,
Thank you. Thank you, Russell. And just for everybody's note, we are co-hosts, Russell and I, and I think we're going to be having a off and on co-host, Maria Alejandra Reyes Valerio out of Vancouver. But what we do here, as Russell has indicated, is we talk humanity and we have panel conversations, and so we've got Hilary King, who I had a talk with in Tug Talks about co-housing. I thought, oh, could we tackle this from the slant of humanity and so forth? So first of all, Hilary, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our absolute pleasure. You're in the midst of a co-housing workshop right now.
I am a very busy, 8 days straight of workshopping. So
wow. So listen, for people watching who may not have watched the Tug Talks piece, let's get one thing out of the way. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and maybe share a little bit on the concept of what co-housing is, and then we'll get into the conversation. Does that make sense?
Sounds great to me.
Fabulous.
Excellent. So my name is Hilary King, as Barry mentioned. I've been working for a few years now in community building, both literally and figuratively. I'm working on a few different projects right now. My main one right now is Co-Housing NL, where we're trying to build a 30-unit co-housing community in Newfoundland, Newfoundland's first co-housing community and the second of the Atlantic provinces. Through that work, I was also introduced to a lot of information on community-led development. So myself and Wendy Reed Fairhurst, who is our community champion for co-housing, recently started a nonprofit called Reclaim Community, and that aims to help community-led development projects throughout the province, as well as champion co-housing at a national level and develop our Canadian expertise across the country. On top of that, but a bit separate, I'm also working with the Study and Stay NL program, which I adore. It's working with international students who are really committed to living in the province. And we help them smooth through that transition from student to professional, get them connected to their networks, mentors, and really hopefully help integrate them in the province so we can retain their amazing selves here instead of having them leave for Ontario or bigger centers. So a lot of exciting work. I'm very passionate about it, and it really lets me explore exciting different ways of building and managing and being and living in community. So it's really exciting work.
Before I hand it over to Russell, I just learned a whole bunch I did not know from Tug Talks. So yeah, there's a lot to dig into. Russell, what are you thinking?
It looks like a lot of urban planning and justice, right? So
yes.
It feels as if you guys are doing a lot of grassroots engagement so that people actually become involved in their communities and develop housing, which is intelligent housing, right? Where communities actually flourish. Is this correct? And
yeah,
because I'm just looking at it from the point of view of what Holland is doing and what Spain is doing, which is that's my point of view, right? So I'm curious to see actually what it actually looks like from how you work, how the housing is actually, is it housing development?
So that is the goal. So right now we're actually, I guess I'll explain co-housing. I missed that piece. But co-housing is a process to build community together. So it's intentional community design through participatory process. So the people come together, you use consensus decision-making to actually build a community that meets the needs of every resident that wants to live there. You build relationships with your neighbors before you even move in. You spend a couple years in that design process of getting to know one another, working through conflicts, a disagreement to come to a consensus. You design your community based on your needs. So for us, we're looking at 58 acres, it's rural, There's a lake on the property. We're exploring farming and animal husbandry and a bee farm. So it's really exciting work in terms of dreaming and visioning what community should look like. We have a goal of affordability for our community. So we're hoping to make 30% of our units affordable at I believe it's the 50,000 household income level. So we're really looking to make changes. Traditionally in North America, it's an unaffordable model as it exists currently. So we're looking to switch that on its head and find more unique and exciting ways to bring that to fruition for more people. Basically, you design it, you go through the design process, you construct it, and then you live there together. There's community social events. There's a common house traditionally in co-housing, which is basically an extended amenities building. So you can downsize your private home and upsize the commons and intentionally create that space to have those spontaneous interactions with your neighbors and develop those relationships and friendships in a natural way, not a forced way. So it's probably a long-winded way to kind of explain it a little bit more.
I don't think you can actually make it a short description of what you're doing, because you're talking
There's
about
so much.
no, because you're talking about, I get the sense you're developing the community on an environmental level, and it has to be sustainable, and you want engagement, and you want the school system close enough, and then the food system close enough. That is the entire governmental system in one right community, right? And there's a democratic process, so and it's affordable, right? So
that's our goal. So our co-founder, Wendy Reed Fairhurst, I mentioned her, she's the community champion. She's actually doing a PhD right now on how to make co-housing affordable in the North American context. So it's kind of a win-win because she's researching it, she's living it, and we're all along for the journey. So it's very exciting.
So here's where my brain's going with it, and everybody knows that my brain goes like, oh my God. Russell, you mentioned Holland and Spain and things that are happening there. I'd like if we could take the conversation to this notion of let's have a conversation about what it looks like in Newfoundland and Labrador. Yes. And Hilary, you mentioned that, part of this process is to, set an example, if you will, to be leaders in North America with regards to this concept. My ignorance says me, and I mean in a positive way, says to me that Europe has been doing some of this stuff in some ways for a while. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'd love as me to learn about what it's looking like on the ground in Newfoundland and Labrador, and what it's looking like from your perspective, Russell, in the European context. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I can go ahead if you want to the Newfoundland piece.
Sure.
Definitely, there's unique challenges in Newfoundland, which is the weather, the terrain, and finding out how we can tackle those things as a community has been very interesting. I will say co-housing as a concept is unique to many in terms of it might be the first time they're hearing about it, but it's really integrated into Newfoundland outport culture. We have so many small communities here. The ones my grandparents grew up in is only a couple hundred people. Everyone knows each other. They're always helping each other. And community and that, I guess, community ecosystem and communal living is already embedded in a lot of people from Newfoundland in their outport experience. So I think that really lends to the concept of co-housing and getting people excited about our idea, is that it's taking that outport small community feeling and recreating it in a more urban center where you're connected to more job opportunities, more people and more things to do. So it's preserving that, but moving it into a more urban center that actually lets you stay more connected as well. So I think that's going to lend really well to our entire process because people already have that background in it. And it makes it more exciting when we do tackle new challenges. Like, how do we do a co-housing community that in California or Vegas could be done when you don't have to worry about rain and snow all the time? But we've got to worry about hurricanes and wind and finding new ways to overcome those challenges. And one other point I wanted to make on this is the residual knowledge that already exists in the community with the people working in it. It's amazing. I've been learning so much. I got a composting machine. I'm starting gardening. Like it's inspired me on a personal level to just be a better person. But learning from each other and the community traditional knowledge that people already have of working on the land, growing on the land, understanding the needs. I've never owned a house. So thinking about all these different aspects I'm learning about of like, oh, I didn't even know you had to consider that piece, or I didn't know that was even a thing, and learning what that is. I think it's a really great fit for Newfoundland culture that way. It's knowledge sharing, tradition sharing, and learning and growing together. So I think it really fits within the province, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with that.
Before Russell, you chime in, it does occur to me that one of the beautiful things about local development is that it can and must need fit to the local culture. I've just been spending some time this week in organizational behavior talking about Hofstede's guidelines for looking at the values that cultures have. So power distance and collectivism versus individualism, and, you know, long-term versus short-term. So you got to look at the local culture and see if they're, you know, where it fits. So that makes total sense. Russell, how about yourself from that European or global? Because I know you have exposure around the world. You know, your thoughts on what you're observing.
I believe that there is a rise in awareness for the need of the kinds of communities Hilary is talking about. And it does make sense because we have become rather individualistic in our approach to many things. And that kind of isolation on top of COVID has propelled us towards a direction Hilary and her communities encouraging us to take, right? But there are places in the world like Holland where the land is already fully developed. We don't have the 53 acres where we can develop something from the grounds up, right? Everything is a minimum of 80 years old. So how do we then engage the community to imagine layering the kind of vision Hilary's community has? Because it's not only about the infrastructure, I believe, but it's about the kinds of relationships we build on top of that. So the community actually sustains and encourages each other to flourish, right? So this is what Holland looks like for me. But there are so many laws to ensure that all the rights of the individuals in that community are sustained, right? What I'm really curious about, though, is, Hilary, with your permission, do you develop from the grounds up and get the individuals in the community to participate in that, or do you enter a community and help redesign it, right? So it becomes more of a community as opposed to, you know, houses which are just next to each other, right? That the human element is the developed part. So I'm curious about which of those two it is for what the project that you're doing.
Yeah, traditionally co-housing as a process is going right from the ground up. So you're working together to select your site, understand the vision for what the community wants, whether that's affordability, fun, relationships, like whatever you want that community to be. Right from the start, you clarify that with all of your members, come to a consensus, and every decision along the design process goes back to that vision and whether you're working to achieve that. So you're in the process, you're designing it, and then when construction comes, I do believe some communities have a hand in constructing some of those things themselves, but you can hire people out to construct. Then when it is designed, everyone moves in and you continue community building. I'd like to iterate that point, I guess. It doesn't end just when the community is built. There's community life circles. There's we were just talking about this morning, there's one community that every morning at 10 a.m. there's a bike club that goes out and goes biking. There's a common terrace so people can all go and have their tea together in the morning. There's gathering nodes where you really intentionally design for if one parent's outside enjoying a coffee with their kid, somebody can see that from their house and be like, oh, hello, like I'm going out. So it's not just the housing, it definitely does continue to develop the community in perpetuity in the future. And it has that as a forefront. Everyone who gets involved with the intention that they want to be a part of the community and be intentional with the relationships within their community. I do think, though, that there's a lot of opportunity to take some of those learnings and principles and transform that into projects that are a built community. How can we increase the connections and relationships we see here? So I do think that's a very interesting future idea for how we can transform our knowledge we learn from this into supporting other communities that already have the built environment. How can we change that and alter that to get people connected better as they move forward?
I love where this conversation's going. I mean, I don't want to get into a conversation about, you know, co-working and remote working. We had a wonderful conversation last month with Suzanne Murdoch on that, but it does occur to me that during this pandemic, I've become more aware of how in the last 2 years, I've spent more money in my local neighborhood. You know, that Mount Pearl, the city I'm in, has gotten more of my time and my energy and my money. But I am loving where this conversation's going, particularly Russell, with you introducing this concept. What about those communities that are already physically, infrastructurally exist? How do we get to a space where we rediscover what a neighborhood feels like and what a common garden could feel like, and, you know, what sharing the lawnmower could feel like instead of everybody, or there's snow blowers, so that there's only one snow blower in use for, like, so here's where I'd like to now explore a little bit. I mean, I'm 62 years young. I've got 20-year-olds in my classroom. I keep seeing all kinds of stuff about millennials and Gen Z and, you know, and boomers and elders. And my observation is that we're not that different. I got 20 somethings in my class that you can't pick out which ones are the Gen Zers and which ones are the boomers in young, you know, bodies. I'd like to look at, you know, from both of your perspectives, how do we get, and I'm presuming they're diverse communities. I'm presuming that they're diverse and inclusive. Besides building the stuff, what are your thoughts on how we truly build communities across generations, across differences? They're all living together now as humans. What are the challenges to that, and how do we make that work? Does that make sense as a question?
Definitely. And I can go ahead again if you'd like Russell to start that. But that's one of our goals, is to be a multi-generational community.
Okay.
And I guess I've really seen how that can be such an asset. I guess at first I didn't understand the importance, and now I'm realizing how much of an asset that is in a community. You have people who, a 14-year-old might be chatting with a 65-year-old, and you can see how that creates benefits for both sides. The younger one can learn from the older one. You've got a sharing of traditions and knowledge happening from the top-down level. And you've also got the reverse happening, where seniors are able to have people that are looking out for them, that want to learn from them, that want them involved in their community. And it's definitely something that can help with the loneliness epidemic that is occurring post-COVID, and that we realize is a problem, is being able to connect people that are in different age groups, might have different interests you think initially, but can actually find that true connection once they're put in the same environment, that they have the opportunity to get to know one another. I will say, I don't know the exact stats on this one, but I do know seniors living in co-housing, generally it's delayed by years, them needing alternative housing and supported living, because they're in the environment that embeds that right where they are. And I think the multi-generationality really plays a key role in that, because they're around children, they have a clear role in the community, they can take on a heightened community role when they're retired. They can support young families who need that support because they've got 2 full-time working parents. So it really, I guess it takes a village. It really embodies that sentence when you can have a diverse range all living in one place.
It makes total sense to me.
You know, when we think of communities which have multi-generations living in it, so I've experienced both of those. I have Philippines, so I'm born in the Philippines, and Philippines, we have our grandparents living close enough to us that their influence was felt in our lives, you know, so there's this passage of generational wisdom, which imbues us with knowledge which you don't get from school or from your parents directly, right? Because there is something in the past which they actually have learned, and they just come and they're like, here, take it, right? They're just so willing to give it to us. So there is that. And there is that element where you were talking about where we delay a little bit them being placed somewhere, which is, in my experience, has been so isolating. Imagine you are loved and then you feel afterwards, you still feel the love, but you don't see the love as much. Like, that those daily visits, those things which sustain, I think, many of us, right? We felt it during COVID, how suddenly, oh my God, I'm so alone, right? Oh my God, I know all these people and no one comes to my door. It feels weird, right? Because I think as human beings, we have this social and deep need to not just connect, but to actually see people, right? We thrive in their company. But also at the same time, I think there is, this, the concept of sharing in the bringing up of generations, right? So they contribute, our generation contributes, and the next generation, they also don't feel so alone, right? Like they're growing up just by themselves. They were planted in the middle of nowhere. Good luck and thrive. It's not like that, right? But this takes an individual and a community to be actually aware of that kind of relationship, or the kinds of relationships which sustain. What happens, I always wonder, when an individual comes from an individualistic society where from a young age they are trained to believe, no, you are alone. They actually, I get the sense that this is what's a part of their educational process. You thrive by yourself, for yourself, and and anyone around you who's kind of like feeling the ripple effect, wonderful. And if they don't, no pasa nada, right? But this is, I wonder how we can assist individuals who come from those kinds of societies to be, yes, I want to be a part of this broader community. And why should they even step into these communities if they're so comfortable where they are, you know?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
there are a
do.
few questions there which I'm like,
Mary, did you want to go first?
No, Hillary, you go.
I do think a big piece is having some individuals who are open to exploring and trying something new, getting that process through and having it as an example. I do know there's some members in our community that were initially hesitant about co-housing. Like, what is this concept? I don't want to be around my neighbors and have to talk to people. And then they went and explored a co-housing community, completely changed their mind. They were like, this is what I want in my life. And now they're 100% in the project. So it's interesting to see how someone who was hesitant and maybe not as open-minded to the concept, it takes that example and seeing what that could be to get people a little bit more engaged. And I do think that's on many different levels. It doesn't have to be a full-on community like we're working towards, but a community garden, a neighborhood block party, anything that actually shows people these people around you are human beings and you can be connected with them. It doesn't have to be like a run into my house so I don't have to say hello kind of experience. And actually, I guess reminding people that the people around them have lives and do have things to share with them in terms of communications, friendships, tools like we were talking about earlier, that everyone has that life. But I do think it is a challenge from an individualistic society. Like Newfoundland is very much a homeowner culture, leans towards home ownership, not rental, not home sharing. Single family detached across Canada is the number one, like that's the goal that shows you've made it, is to be, I want my half-acre lot. I don't want to see my neighbors. I want trees around me. And shifting those perspectives and saying that doesn't have to be the goal. Is that actually meeting your needs in housing? Is your house somewhere you don't want to talk to anyone ever? Or is it somewhere that you want to feel like you're part of something instead of like your own castle and own domain? But I think those will be potentially slowly changing trends. But as we show more examples of what living can be, I think people will be a little bit more open-minded to saying, oh, wow, questioning their living experiences and what they actually want from that.
So I want to, because I'm loving what I'm hearing here, I'm going to constructively stir the pot. You know, a lot of people would think that I'm a massive extrovert. I'm probably 60% introvert. I like my quiet time. Thank you very much. I see myself as Pluto in the solar system, a different orbit, but still part of the solar system. And when they tried to get rid of me as Pluto, I'm glad they've brought us back. Where I'm going with this is that, we've all heard the horrid news down in Texas this week. And, everybody's on different sides of the fence on what the cures are, and to that horrid thing that's going on and continues to. But what's occurring to me in this conversation is the importance of community and the otherness that dehumanizes and causes us to see other human beings as something that we can either ignore or, God forbid, shoot, or and so I'm seeing real value in what you're doing, Hilary, in terms of not just economic development but social development, where we're alongside other people that maybe we don't have the same background. And I just got a new doctor, and my new doctor is from the Middle East, and I'm learning more about certain aspects of culture in working with that doctor. I've got some understanding of the Middle East, and the Middle East is such a broad concept, but he's Arabic, and I'm learning. But you only learn when you're exposed to, and if we're compartmentalized into the different neighborhoods with different community makeups, we don't get that. And so where I'm going with this, and not to put you both on the spot, but it does occur to me that as we build these types of communities, we want different people in them across ages, across colors, across ethnicities, across religions, across all of that stuff. What are your thoughts in terms of how we get that? And I'll finish it with this. If I was part of your community, Hilary, there's a part of me that wants my individual time. I like it. And I don't always want to be in the common garden. And, but there are times when I do. And I liken it to, and this is where I'll finish my diatribe. I grew up following Jane Goodall in her study of chimpanzees. And chimpanzees are very different. Like, they have personalities. They're different, and wolves, the same sort of thing. How do we create communities where we see ourselves as part of the pack and still allow ourselves to be Pluto if I'm Pluto? I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. I do think that was my concern hearing about co-housing first. I'm like, sometimes I don't want to talk to a neighbor. I want to go into my house. I'm having a grumpy day. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. And I think everyone feels that way at times. So a big aspect of when we're designing the site, the common house, and the private house is what spaces are fully private, which ones are fully public, and which ones are that in-between space where you want a little privacy, but you do want to interact with others sometimes to drop by to chat. So that's a big piece of our design process. We actually have Charles Durrett. He's a co-housing guru who's worked on 50 some odd communities in North America, I believe, if not the entire world. So he's in, and he was chatting about the importance of your backyard space. And if people see you in your backyard, it's an unwritten rule in the community he lives in. No one bothers you. They don't say hi. That's your space and your time. And it's understood in the community that your backyard is when you want that time to be Pluto. If you're on your front porch, people will drop by. They'll say hi. They'll start that conversation. And he was saying that traditionally, 80% of people would be using their backyards in the way we have community set up right now. When people move into co-housing, it actually switches, and it's 80% in the front yard that people actually spend their time. So I think a piece of that is people who are a bit more introspective. I think it changes when you're in the community, and in the potential that you might think that you want all that private space and private time,
right,
but you realize that you don't necessarily need it as much as you think. And it's a bit hard in the design process to try and preempt that and understand the changes you may go through living in this community like that. But we do still preserve the private space, and the private homes are private homes. That is your unit, your space. You're not like co-living,
Right.
like some other communities might be doing, but it's, you do have a private unit, a private home, and a private backyard in the ones we're designing.
I'm sold. Okay.
Move in.
Russell?
So, when you think of of a village which gets together in front of a fire, near the fire pit, it's all good and community, right? You want your private time, you take a walk away from the fire pit, and you can walk in any direction, right? And it seems to me, Hilary, that you are talking about more guidelines for human behavior. This space is public, this space is private. You put your garbage can here and not in this side. So there's a lot more respect and consideration required of the individuals who live in these kinds of communities. I think it's actually pulling on us to exercise more of the qualities which we would like to use in our workspaces, but don't have the opportunity. For example, compassion and consideration and all of those other things. But in a community like this, it will become a natural process, and we can tap into it in consideration for the neighbors who live just a spit away, right?
Yeah.
Earlier, Hilary, you mentioned also, how do we convince an individual in an individualistic society to think about these kinds of communities? And you mentioned, yes, we show them the community. Come and have a taste. And if it's your cup of tea, good. And if it's not, take your time and think about it, because it might become your cup of tea in the future, right? To be a little bit open-minded. But it is only through the tasting that we know, yes, this is something we would like to consider now, which we have never thought about before. So the communities that you're talking about actually do exist already, right? And they're flourishing.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. Come and test, right? And this is,
Yeah.
I think what most human interaction also is about. Until someone gets a sense of something or tastes something because we expose them to it or we give them the opportunity to see it, there's no reason for them to consider it, right? Because they're fine where they are. But when you open their eye a little bit or open their heart a little bit, suddenly they're wondering, why was I there all this
Yeah.
time, right? Doing whatever that was when I could have been here. And why did it take so long for someone like Hilary to share this thing with the world so that we wake up to the concept, right? But joke
Yeah.
aside, in that sense, I think then the responsibility becomes about us really constantly talking about it. If these are the designs which will fulfill our future needs, present and future needs, right? Then we have to, I don't want to use the word market, but we have to constantly, it becomes part of our dialogues and
Yeah.
conversations. Check this out. It might be something you want, right?
Yes, there's so many thoughts swirling from that. I can definitely attest myself. It's led me to question a lot about my community I'm living in. There's no walking trails. I don't know. I know two of my neighbors, and that's because my dog loves them. But I don't know any other neighbors around me. So it's like, why don't I have that? It's not walkable. It doesn't have amenities closer that I would like. It's starting to make me question all the things that I just accepted and didn't realize that like there is choice, there is opportunity for you to create the type of housing that you'd like to live in. And I think that's, I guess if I can speak from my experience, I'm sure there's other people going through that same thought process and realizing what that actually can be for them. So I think the more we can market, and that's kind of where the part of the idea for Reclaim spins out on that, is having a nonprofit that's advocating for community-led development in the province and can be an advocate to the government to make more favorable regulations for different and more unique types of affordable housing and different community-led development projects of different types. We have chats, we've been chatting with a seniors nonprofit organization for potentially supporting them in their housing. Cooperative housing is something we're exploring. So it's very, very interesting the different types of impact you can have by advocating for community-led development.
So I want to double down on that, on both what you contributed. I sold my stock in private ownership years ago. I bought into cooperative housing years ago. I don't own my space, but I'm a member of a cooperative. I'm aware that in North America and probably other parts of the world, you've mentioned it, Hillary, it's sold as a definition of success when you buy your new home. And God knows a certain percentage of those people don't have any furniture in them because they couldn't really afford the home in the first place. And so we've got debt amassing and all that kind of stuff. My question to both of you is, how do we engage the conversation? How do we, for lack of a better term, spread the message, market the idea that, you know, it's not crazy to not own your own home, and in case of co-housing, you can own your property. I get that. But, you know, how do we advance this idea and question the mantra that it's got to be this way? I mean, I'll finish by saying when I grew up and I graduated at 22, there were two missions in life that were unconsciously messaged to me: get married and get a house. Right? I tried one, it didn't work. We didn't get the house because it didn't work. And then I bought out of getting a house and like never going there again. I'm not saying I'll never get back to being married again, but yeah, you get the point. But it was part of, you know, growing up in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was hugely, you expected at 22, you graduated, you got your job, get married, get a house. How do we encourage people to open their minds and such to this notion that I think is a brilliant idea? I'm not even going to ask if that makes sense, because that makes sense.
I think, unfortunately, the economic situation with housing in the country is going to be a big motivator for people to explore alternate options, because I know I'm from Ontario, and whenever I visit and look at the housing prices there, I just don't understand how anyone my age, I'm 26, I don't understand how anyone my age, let alone my 6 younger siblings, how are they going to afford a home in 10, 15, 20 years if it costs $1 million for a starter home at that point? So I think that unfortunate situation is going to get people's minds thinking, get the wheels turning, and I guess out of necessity, breed that interest in alternate models of living. It's the same thing with the rental market. There's crises happening across the country in that aspect too. So I think it's going to reach a boiling point where we need innovation, we need unique solutions, we need creativity, and we need people in communities who are willing to champion ideas and push for change. And I guess so from the negative, it will grow into a positive in the sense that I think it's really going to empower people to say, no, this isn't working. It's not working for this generation or future ones. We need to make change. And I do think, I'm hoping the government plays an important role in making it more accessible. I do know they've released a big amount of funding for cooperative housing. So I think that might invigorate a new generation to explore that. I had never heard of that until 2 years ago. So now working in this space, I've learned a lot, but I do really think that might be an opportunity for change, is just a little bit of desperation and a lot of creativity and need. I think that will hopefully be a way we can make new types of housing.
Agreed. Russell?
You know, when we think about the economic state of the world, Canada has a Newfoundland. I always say the name of your city wrong. Newfoundland, yeah?
Very close. Newfoundland.
I heard today it rhymes with understand.
Understand Newfoundland. If you can say understand Newfoundland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So there is funding, right? And there is government engagement, even if it's a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I imagine this concept moving to the East, right? Where, for example, let's take, I don't know, India, Malaysia, Philippines, because it's also needed there, especially from the point of view of economics, right? Then we talk about it on that value, that it will be, if governments become involved, it can become sustainable and affordable, right? But this is also a long-term process. I don't think when we think of co-housing that it is something we take somewhere and we plant somewhere and finish. I think this is one of those things which is going to be for the next 100 years, we will all be engaging in the thought process of transferring the knowledge that you're acquiring already in the organization you work with, right? And it's long-term engagement, because a lot of people are, in my opinion, it's not easy to embrace a concept if your fundamental needs are not met, right? If you cannot send the child to school, there's no clothing, there's no roof over your head, transportation is an issue, and then now you're talking about let's make this co-community housing. You know, it's very hard to jump that ship. However, it is actually logical to jump ship because those needs are never going to be met. There's an opportunity for those needs to be met through this kind of system, right? So we talk about it constantly. So I think this is one of those things. When we imagine, you were asking, Barry, how do we encourage others to join this process? I think someone like me will talk about communities like this where I think of the protection of my children. There are other people who have oversight over their protection. When you were saying, Hilary, it takes a village, right? So if it takes a village, then someone like me who has kids will be, oh yeah, I totally want that, right? But if it's someone who doesn't want to have that, but is interested in the environment and the garden, then they might come on board for that, right? Because when we imagine for also this concept of loving everything, it's not a glove that I can transfer from you to me. I might like just the pinky of that glove, right? So I think that's what we're looking at. People join because there's something which attracts them. So we talk about what we love. So Hilary will talk about the part of that system which she loves the most, right? And multiple people who talk about multiple things they love about co-housing, it paints the whole picture of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise, I don't think I always wonder, how do we transfer that knowledge? How do we make other people come with us or engage with us if they don't love what we do or the things we are involved in, right? Yeah.
There's two thoughts that are occurring to me. We talked about this in organizational behavior this week. There's a theory in motivation that says that there are only two forces in life that really motivate us. One is to avoid pain, and the second is to gain pleasure. And so I call it desperation and inspiration, right? And it occurs to me, Hilary, you were saying about the economics of the thing and how housing has become so insanely unaffordable for most people. I'm reminded of a neighborhood in Detroit. I hope they still exist, but during the major economic crisis, I think in the mid 2000s, housing prices just dropped so badly in this particular neighborhood that was fairly run down that a whole bunch of young people who couldn't normally afford housing bought these homes at like $10,000 a unit and then started creating a cafe and a community garden, and they created this community in the existing infrastructure. They clearly had some extra money to do things up because the houses were so, cheap. But where I'm going with this is that, desperation can cause, necessity is the mother of invention. And
absolutely,
if people cannot afford homes, that's one way. And then, Russell, you paint the picture of two as on the other end is that finding what about it appeals to us. What about community, not community housing, but what about co-housing for me would appeal to me? Would I want to always be? No, but I would like the notion of having that opportunity to go to the shared center and sit down. Yeah, I could dig that and start to find the points that I'm attracted to. So I'm loving this, how you're helping me formulate in my head how we spread the word. I am conscious of the time and I'm loving this conversation. We normally, and Hilary, you've been on other shows, so you know that we tend to finish with a closing thought from each of us on where we are, people watching, and maybe this is the good point or time to do that. I would say that, whatever we share can either be something we've already brought up, we want to reiterate, or it's something completely new that we haven't even brought up, and you're just going to throw that into the pot. So either way, and I've got a thought or two, but I don't necessarily feel like need to go first. Any thoughts that you'd each like to leave people with to munch on?
Definitely. Yeah, one just jumped in my brain, so I'll go before I forget it.
Okay.
And hopefully it's not the same one I did in our Tug Talk chat. But my message, I would say, is question your built environment in the sense, is your housing meeting your needs? And understand what you're actually looking for long term. I've changed my perspective a lot since getting involved with this project. It's really been a 180. And it's helped me grow in a lot of different ways than just thinking about housing. It's exploring sustainability, the environment, active living. It's all these different pieces I wouldn't think would be tied to my job in a housing project. But really question what you want your life to look like, and don't just accept the reality that you might be handed by your cookie cutter neighborhood where you don't talk to your neighbors and you're just living a very individualized, lonely life. Really question about how you can make change there and what you desire with that.
Love it. Russell?
So, okay, where I live in, we don't have these kinds of set co-housing. What we do have is the concept of urbanization, which is houses together inside a compound, but it's so exclusive, they're walled in. They share common space like utilities, the pool, the tennis court. They share those places, and then there's a barbecue, there's a playground, so it's central, and the housing is developed like a square. No, it's inward facing. Imagine something like that without the wall is the way I imagine co-housing, right? Because the wall, what it does is it keeps those who want to look at the structure, they keep them out. So anything which keeps anyone out, for myself, I always question those, right? And I also wonder if we are not living in these kinds of communities like Hilary is talking about, then, because I'm not yet, right? Then I feel that my role then becomes, how do I contribute to creating the kind of community that Hilary is talking about? Because that community is going to fulfill more of my fundamental needs, and possibly my mental, emotional, and spiritual needs, right? So how do I then contribute if I cannot change the system I'm in because the structure is so set in stone, right? In that sense, then I have to play a reverse role. Then I have to assist others who are in that process and help them move forward because I cannot change my circumstance, right? But I love what you're doing, Hilary, and I'm just, yeah, please share with us your contact and the link of the community so that we can get a glimpse of it and actually talk about it more wholeheartedly, and help others think about it also and consider,
Yeah, I want to ride on that. What you're both reminding me of is that I think there's a universal need for us to reclaim community and to reclaim neighborhood, and to, it occurs to me that the world will be made better one community at a time, one example of a community at a time. As we learn the skills to work our local communities, those same skills will help us to work with other communities and will help us. It's an organic process. And I think what you're doing, Hilary, to echo what Russell's saying, is remarkable work at building that kind of, not uniformity, but unity and diversity in a localized community that can be a model for other communities to do the same thing, and then how we interact between communities. So that's bubbling up for me, that we work local and we're, by virtue of the fact doing that, impacting global. That being said, to Russell's point, let us know how people can reach out to any one of your 1,000 projects that you're involved in. Like,
Yes.
yeah, like Go for it. Let's scroll them now.
I'll riddle them all off.
Okay.
The first one, my LinkedIn, Hillary King. I share a lot about my project, so that's a really easy way if you can't remember the rest of what I'm about to say. In terms of the Co-Housing NL project, we're Co-Housing Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a private group on Facebook. You can click request to join. If you would like to send an email to learn more, that is cohousingnewsletter@gmail.com. And in terms of the other one for the international students, if you wanted to follow our LinkedIn page, it's IENL Study and Stay NL program. So you can just give that a search, and then I think that covers it all.
And what does IENL stand for again? The NL is Newfoundland and Labrador, and the I is international. What's the E?
Education. So the Study and Stay NL program is run by an association of all international education stakeholders in the province. So working to advocate for international education here.
Well, I will say right now, and I don't mind saying, we've had 2 conversations now. Well, we've had other conversations too, but I marvel at the work you're doing in terms of building communities and, building communities locally and globally, because you're working with international students. And I marvel at how you're making this a deep sense of purpose. And kudos to you for doing it. And this video will be available for anybody to be able to share and just spread the message. Any final quick thoughts from each of you? Because we're about to do the peace out portion, but yeah, is there anything you want to say before we peace out?
So
you go first, and I got a quick one.
Okay. I just wanted to say, Hillary, because of your very youthful age, I get the sense you'll be in this project long enough to see fruition and to see, that it going to the next level. And that is a beautiful thing. I'm not saying at all that Barry and I are at the end of our, our tree is like.
I got another 60 years, I'm thinking.
That's it, Barry. So we want to collaborate with you, Hillary, because the work you do is foundational to the kind of, it's community work, right? And I guess that's why also the projects are not just this. There are all of this other sub work we do, because everything is intertwined. This is attached to education. It's attached to, delivery systems. It's attached to, government system. It's attached to everything, right? It's like the tree and all of its roots, right? So in that sense, we are all here for the long game. And I personally am so happy to see someone, because I have urban planning background, and I'm happy to see, not urban planning background, but I was exposed to those kinds of thought processes. And I see the potential of how this is going to change us positively. And I'm so happy to meet you.
You as well. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Hillary, anything you'd like to share before we peace out?
Mine's short and a bit off topic, but simple sentiment: embrace community. And I want to let people know, for your work, you don't have to it's great to work the corporate world, but also think about how your work impacts the community around you and what role you want to play there, whether volunteer or work. So I guess for people around my age, that's the message. Start your careers thinking long-term about your community impact.
Digging it all. I'm just going to say peace out. Love the conversation. This is what we do on #Humanity. Until next time. Bye,
Barry,
folks.
There's this new thing.
What's that?
This is the other side of a heart.
Ooh, I'm going to have to work that one.
I have seen people do this, and I didn't know what it was, but yes, peace out.
How do you do it again, real quick?
You do this. And
my fingers are too short.
This is also good. This is universal.
Yes.
Peace out. Bye, folks.
Peace.